Hello, everybody. Today is Tuesday, February 27th, 2024. The time right now as I'm recording this is 8:55 a.m. Time just changed as I was saying that from 8:54 to 8:55. It's 8:55 a.m. right now. I was very excited to do today's daily devotionals. I was in the shower, had to rush out. It's funny too because I didn't have a devotional verse set up for today, so I didn't have one in mind, and I was having trouble picking one when I woke up. But then I asked the Christian community I was in on Discord. Of course, I just typed to them. I was like, "Hey, what should be my devotional?" And people threw a bunch of them at me. But there was one that stuck out at me because it was very, very long. And, I like my long verses. I like to dive in and be deep in theological things and cool stuff. And it was a very big, thick passage in 1 Peter. So that's what we're going to be doing today. If you're new here with me, this is just a daily devotional series where I keep myself responsible for diving into God's Word and hold myself accountable for doing so. So if you are here with me for today's daily devotional, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, new or old subscriber, whoever it is. I don't get a lot of subscribers or views from these videos, but either way, I thank you and I appreciate you being here with me as we read through today's verses in today's devotional. So let's open up our Bibles to 1 Peter chapter 2. We're going to be going through quite a few verses. We're going from 15, verse 15 all the way to verse 24 on this. So we got quite a bit to go through. I did a little bit of pre-reading before this, and the way that this describes itself in the King James is pretty obtuse, but I think there's an overarching message that can be pulled out of this and used. But yes, that's what we'll be reading today. Again, this is 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 15 through 24. For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free, and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. For this is thankworthy, if a man for conscience towards God endure grief, suffering wrongfully. For what glory is it, if when ye buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? But if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable for God. For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye should follow his steps, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth, who, when he was reviled, reviled not. Again, when he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously, who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sins, should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. And that is the entirety of that verse passage, of that devotional section. There is a huge, giant story in just these passages. And just in these passages is reflected, as it says in the actual verses, is reflected in Jesus's sacrifice for us to take on the brunt of all sin, and so that faith through him would save us. There is a giant wealth of just kind of general information that we can glean from this. One, that Christ was not sinful. He didn't have a single sin in his body, as it says, literally in the verse. Or in the passage, rather. that he bared our sins, he took them on without regret, without any sort of negative connotation on it. And during that period where he was being crucified, where he was being hated against and fought against, he did not hate those people. He did not revile them. He didn't want them to suffer as he did. He didn't threaten them. He committed them to the people who were judging them, but righteously. We kind of see this, not in this passage, but kind of a little later on. It's like kind of they know not what they do kind of thing. And so that's what the kind of overarching message of this is. The example of Christ should be what we are following throughout just the entirety of the rest of our lives. So if we kind of go through this, there's don't use your liberty, your free will, as it were, to do maliciousness, to chastise or hate against somebody for something that you are going through or living in your free will. Honor them, love the brotherhood, love your neighbor, of course. It says fear God here. It doesn't necessarily fear as in, oh, I'm scared of you. It means revere. It means in awe of God. Honor the king. You know, I don't take that as the king of like the land. I think that's the king, God. And then it says honor all men, of course. Well, you could honor the men while also honor God, because it's just honoring men means that you're honoring God, because that's his creation and things. And then here's an important passage. So here's where it gets very thick, okay? Let's read it real quick. Servants, this is 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 18. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. Now, it's not fear as in like be scared of your masters, be scared of the people who are higher than you or above you in like your job, or in this case it's explicitly describing people who have like slaves or indentured servants. And so it's saying be in reverence or in respect or in awe of the people that unfortunately are owning the people in that time. There's a reason for this, though. It's not because they're justifying slavery, but there's a reason for this. For it is dankworthy, verse 19, for it is dankworthy if a man for conscience towards God endure grief, suffering wrongfully. Suffering wrongfully. It is understood that people who are enslaved are suffering wrongfully. Let's continue on. For what glory is it if, when ye be buffeted with your faults, ye shall take it patiently? So verse 20a. So it's like, if you do something wrong and you're given reward for it, what good or glory is there to be? But if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. So so 20b. So this is acceptable with God. So when you do something good, like preach the word of God, let's just use an extreme example, and then you get put in jail for it. It's like, and you suffer and you take it patiently, without like fault, without hatred, without remorse even. This is acceptable, meaning that it is a good thing to God, because God doesn't, he doesn't accept sin, which is why he sent Jesus here anyway. But so that's what it is. And then 21, for even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye shall follow his steps, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth, who, when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously, who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sin, shall live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. This is saying Jesus did not revile or hate anybody for what was happening to him while being sacrificed, while being jailed, crucified, tortured. Again, it's a they know not what they do kind of scenario. Even though God, Jesus, already knew it had to happen that way. Verse 21 is important here, because Jesus Christ did provide an example, and that's what I want to hit on, specifically the chunk of verse 21, how rich and thick it is in a moral proscription. For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye shall follow his steps. And then it lists them. I had a little bit of a profound moment yesterday with the word, and I'm having a profound moment now. Jesus is an example of what we should be doing. We will never be Jesus, bar none. It's not going to happen. But it is the example of what we should be aiming towards. I think about all of this. I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure you have seen the videos on the internet. If you are on YouTube, or if you've looked up anything on the internet ever, where you will find pastors and preachers and people of Christ, of God, of course, I'm not going to place any ill will on them, that are getting mad, are like, look at them persecuting us. Look at them tossing us away. Look at them discriminating against us. And they actively make some sort of big judgment upon these people. And they say, look at what they're doing to us. We should not tolerate injustice amongst peoples, of course. If there is a group of people that is being chastised, not because of their belief in Christ, but because of their skin, because of their handedness, because of where they were born, stuff like that. That should be fought against, of course. But that's not what is being talked about here. That's not, it is being persecuted in Christ. Because Christ wasn't, nobody discriminated against Jesus because of the color of his skin. Okay? That didn't happen. What he was discriminated against for was because he said, I and the Father are one. And who do you think I am? And the people of the time, the Pharisees, were like, whoa, dude. And they killed him for it. I don't mean to laugh, but in the moment, in retrospect, I mean, it feels very just kind of funny that that's ended up what happened without them having any clue what was the kind of the ramifications for it or what they were even doing. of course, all in God's plan. It was something that had to have been done. But so if you are persecuted in Christ, discriminated against for Christ, that's what this is talking about. I mean, verse 20b specifically, but if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable to God. Take it patiently. Make no mistake, if someone's being murdered for believing in God or being put in jail, of course, I think we should actively fight against this. But persecution here is a very broad term that I'm using, at least. And it's what this is describing here is more of the social aspect of it. It's not, I mean, it doesn't make any sort of indication that it's talking about being jailed or I mean, so Jesus was crucified, but it's not making any example of whether or not that is the thing that it is talking about. It says Jesus is an example of what we should be doing in the face of this persecution. And what's really interesting about this, not to be extra biblical, but you could really take this message and kind of really zoom out of it and use it for any characteristic of it's like if you're like a black person and you're being discriminated against because you're black or whatever, if you take that patiently without retaliation or without hatred towards that person, people would look at you as noble, bold, strong-willed. That's a great thing. I think having that is good. We shouldn't tolerate that kind of hatred towards people's. But even so, somebody willing to take it onto the chest and be noble about it, knowing who they are anyway, that's very good. Then we zoom back in. If you are persecuted and hated and discriminated for being a Christian, taking it on the chest, just, okay, God bless, I hope you do well, have a great day. Because Jesus did that. And I think about all of the times where I could have been that example. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I'm sure there are examples amongst all peoples, you, me, my girlfriend, my family, her family, where they could have been that Christly example, and they were not. There's a very funny line in a movie called Transformers, came out in 2007, and the main character is trying to get a car, and he barely misses on an A- in a class or whatever, and he's talking to his teacher, and he says something, the main character says, "Hey, I'm trying to do this, my dad's outside, I'm trying to get a car, what would Jesus do?" And while I don't take the example as what would Jesus do, I think of the line specifically. What would Jesus do? Are we approaching major scenarios with that in mind? I don't think we should be, hey, do I get coffee or do I get tea? What would Jesus do? I don't think that's productive. But if we're driving and we just happen to see a homeless person on the side of the road. I don't drive. This is just a crazy example. But if we happen to see them and we just drive by them, we look right at them, we acknowledge they exist, but we don't do anything. Is that what Jesus would do? Unfortunately, in places where it is kind of illegal to be homeless, you can't exactly help those people in any direct way. But here in Florida, there are homeless people. My girlfriend, being the Christly woman that she has been, has there's been a very specific occasion where she was better than me in that moment, and wanted to get all this stuff for a guy that was hanging out by this store, and he didn't have nothing, but he had 2 dogs, so we got him a giant thing of water and some food. That's what Jesus would do. And we fall short. No doubt about it. I have to grapple with that. I'm not okay with it, but I have to come to terms with it that we will fall short. We won't do the Christ thing every single time. I would even say we wouldn't even do it most of the time. And that's just about homeless people. I'm talking in general. When you see the donation button, do you want to donate to this children's charity? I would hark at the idea that even half of those people hit yes. Maybe I'm putting too much ill will on them. I'm not trying to, but I would hark at the idea that half of them even hit yes. And that's just the nature of the world that we live in. As unfortunate as that is, we have to grapple with the sin, and we have to really trudge and come to terms with it. But the example is still there. What this is telling us is that in the face of sin, persecution, the world at large, Jesus did everything right. Every single thing. That is the example that we have. What would Jesus do? Verse 15 here. For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. It's not foolish as an insult. It is the ignorance of foolish men, those who don't know, those who maybe don't understand, those who reject the good of Christ. I think about just during the entire thing, he's carrying the cross to where he's going to be crucified. All of these people around him, the guards, whoever it is, hitting him, telling him to move, go. And that entire time, when he was being tortured all the way up until his final breath, he did not have a single negative thought towards any of those people. He did not have a single moment where he wanted to hurt them back. He wanted them to suffer this. Jesus did not want anybody to suffer through that. Verse 23, who when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? Let's pray on it. Dear Lord, thank you for your word this morning. Thank you for your word in Jesus, the final promise, the fulfilled prophecy, all of it. I think at some of the division amongst the world, Lord, some of to put it bluntly, just the hateful words and rhetoric people use towards people that are otherwise just trying their best. They won't live up to Jesus, and we all get that, but that's just not what Jesus would do. And I pray that my perspective on this gets strengthened and that I understand how powerful Jesus was during the time he was on this earth. And I pray that I am guided in him with all of my decisions throughout the day, with my relationships, with my job, with my goings on amongst the world. I pray very deeply about this, Lord. I pray that we are all guided in that example of Jesus. That is your perfect will fulfilled here on earth, Lord. I pray that you turn people in that direction. You turn me more in that direction towards Christ. And I hope that we are all guided on that path that we need to be on. By your will, that will be done, Lord. It is all up to you. I pray you watch over me and my family here in Florida, Lord, and my girlfriend and her family, and all of the families and all of the extended families out from them, and over the entire world there, Lord. I thank you for all you do, for your sacrifice, for your just goodness and your mercy and your grace, and for your example that we can all look towards and think about what you did on this earth. Again, thank you for all you do. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for joining me for today's daily devotional, everybody. Really, really intense message today. I even have some stuff to think about a little bit after this, but if you are here with me through the entire thing, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Again, very intense message. I will, of course, be seeing you in tomorrow's daily devotional. I'll keep doing these as long as I can. I will, there is something coming up here soon that I'm going to have to kind of work my way through. So the devotionals for next week might be a little bit shorter. I'll address that towards the end of the week, probably on Saturday or Sunday or something. But overall, I will continue uploading these whenever I can and be in with you through God's Word and all of that good stuff. And so, again, I appreciate you being here with me. I will see you in tomorrow's daily devotional. God bless.